Welcome to another edition of This Week in Disc Golf. It's Tuesday, December 13th. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, and here's what happened this week. Well, all the conversation in the disc golf world has been about new guidelines coming out from the PDGA and the Disc Golf Pro Tour yesterday around transgender participation in the FPO division. The new guidelines will effectively block transgender women from competing in the FPO division at pro majors and elite series and silver events on the DGPT. The PDGA gender eligibility policy reads that for pro majors, transgender women are only eligible to compete if they began medical transition during Tanner Stage 2 or before age 12, whichever is later. Effectively, this requires a transgender woman to have begun taking testosterone suppressants before going through puberty as a male. This matches the controversial guidelines that were set out by FINA, the International Swimming Federation. What this means for now is that Natalie Ryan, Chloe Alice, and other transgender women will be unable to compete in the FPO division on the professional tour. Natalie Ryan won twice in 2022 on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. She won the Discraft Great Lakes Open as well as the MVP Open. She wrote on Instagram, quote, "I'm incredibly saddened and hurt by this announcement. I did everything I could to speak on behalf of inclusion, but the PDGA Board of Directors had a decision made before I ever set foot in that room." She later told Ultiworld Disc Golf, quote, "Trans participation wasn't a problem until I was successful. I feel broken in the wake of these announcements, but one thing is clear to me. This decision was to force me off the tour, not to make it more fair. The research they used to justify this is a joke, and the fact that they used public opinion to make policy is downright lazy at best. I will prove their short-sighted hatred in court." Natalie Ryan has since formed a GoFundMe to raise legal fees for a potential lawsuit against the PDGA. This could become one of the first times that a top athlete has sued a sports federation around transgender eligibility in the women's division, and this could potentially set a legal precedent for transgender participation in sports more generally if this does go to court. The PDGA released a lot of information about the board vote and the decision. They released the medical subcommittee report that cited research and opinions that concluded transgender women on hormone therapy maintain strength advantages over cisgender women. The PDGA also released the results of the survey of all of its members. Over 35,000 people participated, and the majority of respondents, including in subcategories like women who predominantly compete in Disc Golf Pro Tour events, indicated that they disagreed with transgender women participating with other women in sports. 67% of respondents disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement, quote, "Transgender women should be allowed to compete with other women in disc golf and in other sports." Among female respondents that indicated that they primarily competed at Disc Golf Pro Tour events, 80% disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. In the PDGA's discussion of the new guidelines, they said, quote, "The decision to change eligibility criteria at our events was not made lightly. The PDGA Global Board of Directors worked tirelessly over the last 10 months to study this issue and debated and discussed this topic for 11 and a half hours on the second day of the Fall Summit. After carefully reviewing 10 different proposals, the PDGA Global Board of Directors voted to update the eligibility criteria for gender-based divisions. The PDGA Global Board of Directors cares deeply about the culture and history of the sport of disc golf. From the beginning, disc golf has strived to be an inclusive sport that welcomes people from all walks of life. The PDGA Global Board of Directors values fairness and inclusion and will continue to evaluate and update this policy as additional science and data become available and as additional sporting organizations around the world continue to look at this issue." The PDGA's new rules immediately become one of the strictest transgender eligibility policies in the world of sports. Only a couple of other international sports federations have restricted transgender athletes in the women's divisions to those who transitioned pre-puberty. Most still allow transgender women to participate in the women's division if they have a testosterone level below a certain threshold. That policy will remain in effect for all PDGA amateur majors, pro masters majors, and A-tier events and below. So the PDGA rules for pre-puberty transitions only apply to the pro majors. The Disc Golf Pro Tour also announced that it will be adopting the pre-puberty transition rules that the PDGA set out for the pro majors for all of its Elite Series events and the silver events. The DGPT's statement read, quote, "The Disc Golf Pro Tour is the official pro tour of the PDGA and recognizes the PDGA as the governing body of the sport and the regulatory authority in this matter. DGPT policy will remain aligned with the PDGA's policy as it applies to gender-based eligibility across the top level of competition in the sport. Any questions regarding the development and details of this policy should be directed to the PDGA." The new eligibility rules for the PDGA and Pro Tour will go into effect on January 1st, 2023. What that means is that Natalie Ryan and almost all other transgender players who have competed at the highest level of the sport will not be eligible to compete in FPO next year. They will still be eligible to play in the MPO, the Mixed Professional Open setting, if they so choose. Moving on, some hot stove news. Anthony Barela announced that after 9 years of being sponsored by Innova, he will be moving on. He has not announced his new destination at this time, but he did shout out Innova in an Instagram post. He said, quote, "These past 9 years have been a dream come true for me, and I want to thank Innova for believing in my skills and always supporting myself and my family out on the road. Although it's upsetting to leave Innova, I'm excited for what the future holds and know I made the best decision for myself. See you in 2023. That brings us to our Statmando stat of the week. Anthony Barela just shot his best ever round, over 1,100 rated. It officially came in at 1103. It's the 53rd 1100 plus rated round in PDGA event history. It's the 16th such round in Arizona. It's the first round in Arizona, though, outside of the Memorial, which seems to give 1100s out like candy. And it is Anthony Barela's first ever 1100 plus rated round. He's at a career high 1037 rated right now and heading to a new sponsor next year, so we'll see where he ends up. In this week's Social Media Minute, nice to see Paige Pierce and Alyssa Van Lanen enjoying themselves in their engagement. Kind of a second engagement, as Paige got a ring from Alyssa this time after the two of them got engaged earlier this year. And special moment at the roller rink. Paige Pierce said Alyssa had planned her own proposal for me and invited her family as well. This was the biggest and best surprise I could have ever imagined. Congratulations to Paige and Alyssa. And that will do it for this week. We'll be back with you next Tuesday as the off-season rolls along right here on the Disc Golf Pro Tour YouTube channel and the Disc Golf Network.